old days, the first thing I wrote was censored. CBS said they wouldn't air it. And so I love hearing this. This is the freedom that I was fighting for and never got. So, you may not all know this, but I know this. The reason we're all here tonight and because we're not rushing around getting ready to be honored on April 28th by the Ms. Foundation's Women of Vision Awards. None of us. I felt good about being invited here until I realized it meant I haven't done enough politically, media, and justice, so I'm not getting honored. So I guess protesting and signing petitions doesn't count. And I'm not really a performer. As she said, I'm a comedy writer, which I prefer because you don't have to stay up late and you don't have to suck in your stomach. When I go out in public, nobody asks to take pictures of me, not even my husband. Christina asked me to be here, and I don't actually deliver my own jokes. I've been lucky enough to have really talented people deliver what I say. So if I'm bad, blame I'm not a performer. Blame Christina, it's not me. I was thrilled to have a career because there were no women doing anything when I grew up. No, they were cleaning the house, but I thought I was going to get a husband in college. That's why I went to college. But I graduated, and somebody else married the guy I thought was going to be my husband. So the next thing I knew was she had my house in Scarsdale and gave birth to my kids. I'm just hoping she has my stretch marks. So there I was, 23 and single, and then I was an old maid then at that age, bouncing around from one secretarial job to another. I was already a failure. My older brother, who lived in California, suggested I go out there. So I got to LA, and I had only seen it probably as you had the Academy Awards. It looked very exciting, and no. All you could do there was either jog or work in show business, and neither one of which was very exciting. Especially when I got hired to be a secretary. I don't know if you'll remember him, Jerry Lewis. Somebody backstage just asked me if he was dead, and I said, yeah, and I didn't do it, so I thought about it. Because I thought he was that cute Shamil that he was with Jean Martin, but he was nothing like that. He boasted about being married. Meanwhile, he was fooling around all the time. And he treated me like a copying machine. Just if I got the job done, that was all he cared about. I had really glamorous things to do, like I answered the phone, hello, Jerry Lewis Productions. And then I buzzed him one day, and I said, wife is calling. A second later, the office manager ran up to reprimand me. When you buzz Mr. Lewis, we had to call him Mr. Lewis, so nobody in LA uses their last name. Okay. When you buzz Mr. Lewis, say Mrs. Lewis is calling. Don't say your wife is on the phone. And I said, why? Is there more than one wife? And he said, it's just more respectful. I knew not to say what I was thinking. And what should I say when his mistress calls? So I knew to get out of there, and I did. And then my life started. I went to work for Carl Reiner, and I think you know who he is. And he was absolutely the opposite, a mensch. And my second week, I said to him, I was just trying to see if he was really the mensch I thought he was. And I said, I have to leave early on Thursday. I have a dentist appointment. And he said, I guess thinking I was going to be subservient, I don't know. He said, may I leave early on Thursday? This wasn't going the way I wanted. I said, you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to be here. And he laughed too. And I knew I was on my track. It was just, suddenly I had freedom. I had a boss who treated me well, and it was wonderful. And he never actually asked me to do any personal favors. I was sort of the boss in the office. He's dead, I can say that now. He did what I said. So one day, he said, my license plate fell off my car, and I don't want to go to the DMV, which I understood. People robbed him. So he asked if I would go to DMV and get him another plate. So I went over there, and what I didn't know was that
Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, I just got found out. I don't know, that meant something, but I don't know what it meant. So I'm on the line. I waited an hour. I finally got to the front. I was with the guy from the DMV, and I told him why I was there. I needed, a plate fell off my boss's car. He said, well, where's the other plate? And I said, the other plate? And he said, yeah, you have to bring it in. And the whole line was now getting nervous because this was not right. And I said, the other plate. Did I say one plate fell off? 2 plates fell off. And that was my entrance to comedy. The whole line laughed and clapped, and I pulled it off. And so those are sort of I think back now, I think that was the launching of Sybil the Badass. But so I was 26, and suddenly the women's movement came along, and I thought working for Carl Reiner was the best job I'd ever had. No. They reversed the rules. Now it was okay to be single, but you were supposed to have the same kind of job as a man. So I didn't know what to do because I didn't have anything I could do. So one of those dateless Saturday nights, my girlfriend was over. We were watching the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and I surprised both of us. I said, why don't we write one of these? She said, nobody's going to take us seriously. And I got it because there were maybe 2%, I think, of the shows were written by women. And that probably included the soap operas. And I said, no, but I can get it read by Carl. And the agents would come in and said, why don't we do it? I rattled off the story. She agreed to try. So we worked at night. We got a script done. I asked Carl to read it. Scared to death while he was reading it because I couldn't imagine it. He worked with all these great professionals. He came in. He looked really upset, walking towards my desk, threw the script on my desk, and said, it's very good. It's the best script I've ever read. I couldn't believe it. And then he said, and come in Monday with ideas. He was producing a show for Dick Van Dyke, not the original one. It was called The New Dick Van Dyke Show with Hope Langland was on. I want you to do it. I couldn't believe this, but of course I thought he's probably just being nice. But then we got offers and got asked to do all these other shows, Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart, and Maud, and I hadn't expected any of this. I called my mother thinking she would be excited. I said, Mom, I was nominated for an Emmy. And I knew how proud she'd be because she joined 2 more synagogues just to brag when my older brothers got into law school. So she said, I'll have to call you back. I'm making knishes. Did you hear me? I'm nominated for an Emmy. That's a big deal for the Lily Tomlin special I wrote. Oh, she said, all right, so wear periwinkle blue. It'll bring out your eyes, and Stephen Caney will be sorry he ever got rid of you. I was just looking at the Emmys as a dating opportunity, and I said, Mom, last time I saw Stephen Caney, I was 7. She just was desperate for me to get married. Anyway, she said, no. And I said, what makes you think he'll be watching? And she said, well, because when we hang up, I'm calling Mrs. Caney. I hear he's still single. So she was not giving up. And so all this was new, and it was new to her, it was new to me. I was making a fortune. I couldn't believe what they paid me for writing for television. Yet every time I would see my mother, she'd shove a little $5 bill into my hand. None of us knew what to do with me. There were no women writing comedy. It was all absurd. And I didn't know what to do either because I thought it's going to end. So I didn't spend any of the money I was making. I stayed in my $155. In LA, you get a nice apartment for that. I stayed there. I bought a coffee machine. Those are my expenses. And the only thing, and I still rode my old lucky Mercury Capri, which that wasn't me. Everybody else had Mercedes. So I was working on the staff of a show. And every morning the same thing would happen. I would drive onto the Paramount lot, and the guard would look at a woman driving in, look at my car that was dirty and cheap, and would look through his list, knowing he was going to get to say, no, your name's not on this. But my name was on the list. But until he found it, there would be gridlock. Every Mercedes was backed up behind me. It was just irritant. And so I was having those experiences because there was a lot of sexism. And, you know, as I went to a meeting, you had to go to a meeting each time somebody was setting up a variety show. And this guy said to me, I don't want to sound chauvinistic, but are you funny? And I said, no, I'm getting by on my lip. What a dick, what is this? Are you funny? He had my material. And I knew it was sexist when he hired 12 men and no women. But this kept going. Well, you know, another day I was having lunch in the commissary with my friend Steve, when a producer plopped down. He said, Steve, I'll give you $35,000 to write a pilot for me. And he looked at me, Sybil, I'll give you $30,000. I said, wait a minute, you just told him you're going to give him $35,000 and me $30,000. What's that about? Because he and I were in the same place in our careers. He said, well, you're a woman. I didn't believe what I was hearing. And so it was more than my share of that. And I think the worst one I got was I walked in to meet an Asian for the first time, and he greeted me, I hear you're tough in a room. I said, who said that? I asked him. I can't name names, he waved it off. Well, if you do, I told him, I'll tell you everyone who said really shitty things about you. And I had to speak up. I felt, I mean, I would do it playfully, but I felt I was speaking up for all of women, you know, by behaving. What was that about? Oh, don't do that. You scared the shit out of me. I thought that was go home. Was there anybody who was doing that, like go home?
No, we're applauding you.
Well, I was behaving like what they called in Hollywood, fuck you money. I behaved like I had fuck you money.
Yes.
And that's why I never had fuck you money. Because I used to think humor was just something you got if you didn't have a pretty face. And now I think, no, being funny is the thing I value most. I'm still dazzled that I got to work with the men I did. And over the years, one of my favorite things to do was I got to write material for Lily Tomlin when she was doing club. It was nothing better. And then she was performing in New York, so I got to go, and where I used to hear kind of modest amount of laughs in the sitcom audience, she was in a huge club in Westbury, and really, I don't think I was crazy. I think the joke I wrote did get the biggest laughs of the night. And I had her say, I've reached the age where if I get a gift of a bracelet, it's not because I'm good in bed. It's to tell the paramedics what to do if I fall out of it. She got a bigger laugh at the thing. Thank you.